In Christian theology, hell is the place or state into which, by God's definitive judgment, unrepentant sinners pass either immediately after death or in the general judgment. Its character is inferred from teaching in the biblical texts, some of which, interpreted literally, have given rise to the popular idea of hell. Theologians today generally see hell as the logical consequence of using free will to reject union with God, and because God will not force conformity, not incompatible with God's justice and mercy. Calvinists, on the other hand, believe hell is a consequence of God's justice for man's sin, but reject the libertarian notion of free will. Different Hebrew and Greek words are translated as hell in most English-language Bibles. They include Sheol in the Hebrew Bible and Hades in the New Testament. Many modern versions, such as the New International Version, translate Sheol as grave and simply transliterate Hades. It is generally agreed that both Sheol and Hades do not typically refer to the place of eternal punishment, but to the grave, the temporary abode of the dead, the underworld, Gehenna, in the New Testament, where it is described as a place where both soul and body could be destroyed in unquenchable fire. The word is translated as either hell or hellfire in many English versions. The Greek verb tau alpharo, which occurs once in the New Testament, is almost always translated by a phrase such as thrown down to hell. A few translations render it as Tartarus. Of this term, the Holman Christian Standard Bible states, Tartarus is a Greek name for a subterranean place of divine punishment lower than Hades. 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 4. Jewish background. In ancient Jewish belief, the dead were consigned to Sheol, a place to which all were sent indiscriminately. Sheol was thought of as a place situated below the ground, a place of darkness, silence and forgetfulness. By the 3rd to 2nd century BC, the idea had grown to encompass separate divisions in Sheol for the righteous and wicked. And by the time of Jesus, some Jews had come to believe that those in Sheol awaited the resurrection of the dead either in comfort or in torment. By at least the late rabbinical period, Gehenna was viewed as the place of ultimate punishment, exemplified by the rabbinical statement, the best of physicians are destined to Gehenna, also described in Assumption of Moses and 2 ESD Ras. The term is derived from Hinnom, a valley near Jerusalem originally used as a location for human sacrifices to the idol Moloch, and he defiled the Tophet, which is in the valley of Ben Hinnom, that no man might make his son or his daughter pass through the fire to Molech. 2 Kings chapter 23 verse 10. And they built the high places of the Baal, which are in the valley of Ben Hinnom, to cause their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire to Molech, which I did not command them, nor did it come into my mind that they should do this abomination, to cause Judah to sin. Jeremiah chapter 32 verse 35. In the Greek Septuagint, the Hebrew word Sheol was translated as Hades, the name for the underworld and abode of the dead in Greek mythology. The realm of eternal punishment in Hellenistic mythology was Tartarus. Hades was a form of limbo for the unjudged dead. Hell in the New Testament. 3 different New Testament words appear in most English translations as hell. The most common New Testament term translated as hell is gamma epsilon nu alpha, a direct loan of Hebrew. Apart from one use in James chapter 3 verse 6, this term is found exclusively in the Synoptic Gospels. Gehenna is most frequently described as a place of fiery torment. Other passages mention darkness and weeping and gnashing of teeth. Apart from the use of the term Gehenna, while the general epistles use a range of terms and images including raging fire, destruction, eternal fire, and blackest darkness, the Book of Revelation contains the image of a lake of fire and burning sulfur, where the devil, the beast, and false prophet will be tormented day and night forever and ever, along with those who worship the beast or receive its mark. The New Testament also uses the Greek word Hades, usually to refer to the abode of the dead. Only one passage describes Hades as a place of torment, the parable of Lazarus and Dives. Jesus here depicts a wicked man suffering fiery torment in Hades, which is contrasted with the bosom of Abraham, and explains that it is impossible to cross over from one to the other. Some scholars believe that this parable reflects the intertestamental Jewish view of Hades as containing separate divisions for the wicked and righteous. In Revelation chapter 20 verses 13 to 14, Hades is itself thrown into the lake of fire, after being emptied of the dead. Biblical names Abaddon. The Hebrew word Abaddon, meaning destruction, is sometimes interpreted as a synonym of hell. Gehenna. In the New Testament, both early and modern translations often translate Gehenna as hell. Young's literal translation and New World Translation are notable exceptions, simply using Gehenna. Hades. Hades is the Greek word traditionally used for the Hebrew word Sheol in works such as the Septuagint. The Greek translations of the Hebrew Bible, like other first-century Jews literate in Greek, Christian writers of the New Testament employed this usage, while earlier translations most often translated Hades as hell, as does the King James Version. Modern translations use the transliteration Hades, or render the word as allusions to the grave, among the dead, place of the dead, or similar statements. In Latin, Hades could be translated as Purgatorium after about 1200 AD, but no modern English translations render Hades as Purgatory. Sheol. In the King James Bible, the Old Testament term Sheol is translated as hell 31 times, and as the grave 31 times. Sheol is also translated as the pit 3 times. Modern translations typically render Sheol as the grave, the pit, or death. Tartarus, appearing only in 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 4 in the New Testament. Both early and modern translations usually translate Tartarus as hell, though a few render it as Tartarus. Parables of Jesus concerning the hereafter. In the eschatological discourse of Matthew chapter 25 verses 31 to 46, Jesus says that, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory, he will separate people from one another as a shepherd separates sheep from goats, and will consign to everlasting fire those who fail to aid the least of his brothers." This separation is stark, with no explicit provision made for fine gradations of merit or guilt. "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison and you did not look after me. Whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." Matthew chapter 25 verses 41 to 43. In a parable about the rich man and Lazarus, in Luke chapter 16 verses 19 to 31. The poor man Lazarus enjoys a blissful repose in the bosom of Abraham, while the rich man who was happy in life is tormented by fire in Hades, the two realms being separated by a great chasm. Orthodox conceptions of hell. Basic Orthodox teachings on hell. Eastern Orthodox views. The Eastern Orthodox Church teaches that heaven and hell are relations to or experiences of God's just and loving presence. There is no created place of divine absence, nor is hell an ontological separation from God. One expression of the Eastern teaching is that hell and heaven are dimensions of God's intensifying presence, as this presence is experienced either as torment or as paradise depending on the spiritual state of a person dwelling with God. For one who hates God and by extension hates himself as God's image-bearer, to be encompassed by the divine presence could only result in unspeakable anguish. Aristotle, Papa Nicolau and Elizabeth H. Prodromo wrote in the book Thinking Through Faith, New Perspectives from Orthodox Christian Scholars that for the Orthodox Those theological symbols, heaven and hell, are not crudely understood as spatial destinations but rather refer to the experience of God's presence according to two different modes. Several Orthodox theologians do describe hell as separation from God, in the sense of being out of fellowship or loving communion. Archimandrite Sophrony spoke of the hell of separation from God. Paul Evdokimov stated, "Hell is nothing else but separation of man from God, his autonomy excluding him from the place where God is present." According to Theodore Stylianopoulos, hell is a spiritual state of separation from God and inability to experience the love of God, while being conscious of the ultimate deprivation of it as punishment. Michel Queneau stated, "Hell is none other than the state of separation from God, a condition into which humanity was plunged for having preferred the creature to the Creator. It is the human creature, therefore, and not God, who engenders hell. Created free for the sake of love, man possesses the incredible power to reject this love, to say no to God. By refusing communion with God, he becomes a predator, condemning himself to a spiritual death more dreadful than the physical death that derives from it." Another writer declared, "The circumstances that rise before us, the problems we encounter, the relationships we form, the choices we make, all ultimately concern eternal union with or separation from God." The Eastern Orthodox Church rejects what is presented as the Roman Catholic doctrine of purgatory as a place where believers suffer as their venial sins are purged before gaining admittance to heaven. Contrary to Western Christianity, both Roman and Protestant varieties, the Christians of the East emphasize the mystery of God in his pre-eternal transcendence and maintain a tradition of apophatic theology, while the technical, cataphatic theology of scholasticism tends to be downplayed or viewed as subordinate. Thus, there is no single, official, teaching of the Church apart from apostolic doctrine received and, when necessary, defined by ecumenical councils. The Orthodox positions on hell have derived from the sayings of the saints and the consensus views of the Church Fathers. They are not in agreement on all points, and no council universally recognized by the Eastern Orthodox Churches has formulated doctrine on hell, so there is no official doctrine to which all the faithful are bound. Beliefs concerning the nature and duration of hell are considered theologomena, or theological opinions, rather than dogmas of the Church. Images of hell. According to Theodore Stylianopoulos, many Orthodox saints and writers assume the general view of hell as a place of punishment, even by means of material instruments such as fire, whether of the soul after death or both soul and body after the resurrection. St. John Chrysostom pictured hell as associated with unquenchable fire and various kinds of torments and torrents of punishment. Eastern Orthodox icons of the Last Judgment, most notably in the Slavic traditions, often depict tormented, lost sinners in hell. Pages 66 to 69 of John Paul Himka's Last Judgment iconography in the Carpathians provides an illustrated description of some such 15th century Carpathian icons based on a Northern Rus prototype. The depiction in these particular icons, a depiction that may have developed from 12th century Greek and South Slavic depictions differentiating sinners and their punishments, is referred to by Himka as the new hell, because various sinners are being punished in a squarish area with torments that did not appear in the standard Byzantine iconography. Icons based on the Ladder of Divine Ascent, by St. John Climacus, show monks ascending a 30-rung ladder to heaven represented by Christ, or succumbing to the arrows of demons and falling from the ladder into hell, sometimes represented by an open-jawed dragon.